Negotiators believe, by the way, Hamas and Israel are making slow progress, saying a ceasefire and a hostage release deal could be reached before the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. An Israeli and U.S. official tell the Wall Street Journal Israel has agreed to the outlines of a deal that includes a 6-week truce. But officials say Hamas has yet to provide answers on two key sticking points: which Palestinian prisoners the group wants freed and how many for each hostage released. Because of that, Israel has not sent a senior delegation to Cairo for negotiations. Members of Hamas, however, are there. Vice President Kamala Harris is set to meet with a member of Israel's war cabinet today at the White House. This just one day after Harris called for an immediate ceasefire in the war in Gaza. Here she is speaking yesterday in Selma, Alabama.
People in Gaza are starving. The conditions are inhumane. And our common humanity compels us to act. The Israeli government must do more to significantly increase the flow of aid. No excuses. They must open new border crossings. They must not impose any unnecessary restrictions on the delivery of aid. They must ensure humanitarian personnel, sites, and convoys are not targeted. And they must work to restore basic services and promote order in Gaza so more food, water, and fuel can reach those in need. I will repeat. The threat of Hamas poses to the people of Israel must be eliminated. And given the immense scale of suffering in Gaza, there must be an immediate ceasefire. For at least the next 6 weeks, which is what is currently on the table. Hamas claims it wants a ceasefire. Well, there is a deal on the table. And as we have said, Hamas needs to agree to that deal. Let's get a ceasefire. Let's reunite the hostages with their families. And let's provide immediate relief to the people of Gaza.
Joining us now is columnist and associate editor for The Washington Post, David Ignatius. His latest piece is entitled Food Convoy Carnage, distills what's gone terribly wrong in Gaza.
You know, David, thank you for being with us. You know, David, what Kamala Harris said publicly, Joe Biden, Tony Blinken, other officials inside the Biden administration have been urging Israel to do now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And there had been, as you know, quite a debate inside the White House about when was he going to break publicly with Netanyahu. That wasn't a break with Netanyahu, but that the administration finally said publicly what had been saying privately all along. The conditions in Gaza are unacceptable. You have to provide relief. Talk about that and talk about just how dire the situation is in Gaza.
So, Joe, first to the situation in this months of terrible war. I don't know that we saw an image more poignant than the drone footage of hundreds and hundreds of Palestinians in the pre-dawn on Thursday morning, scrambling desperately after this convoy of aid trucks, climbing on the trucks, climbing over each other. It appears that in the panic, this pre-dawn time, that there was a stampede of people, that they were crushed under the truck's wheels, that some Israeli troops opened fire. It's a scene. I likened it, sadly, to a chapter in Lord of the Flies come to life, where you see when people are reduced to this raw struggle for survival, what happens. So this is indicative, the Biden administration believes, of Israel's lack of a clear plan. It simply does not have a way of providing order and security in the areas that it has cleared of Hamas fighters in northern Gaza. The people who are maintaining order, and I put that in quotation marks, are criminal gangs. They're organized criminals, looting the food. They intimidate convoy truck drivers who are poised to bring more food. So that led to, I think, an unusual decision by the administration to intervene more directly. That's what the airdrops are about. You can't get convoys in safely. We're going to take over. We're going to begin dropping by air. They're going to build a port off Gaza. They're contracting now with people in Cyprus to bring in docks. The Gazan waters are very shallow. They're going to figure out a way to have long floating docks and bring aid in that way. They're going to figure out ways to do convoys that are more secure. The administration is fed up with the situation. Second really important thing that's happening is the visit today in Washington of Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz, former Army Chief of Staff. He's going to meet with Kamala Harris. He's going to meet with Jake Sullivan. But the importance of this visit is Bibi Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, did not want him to come. Bibi Netanyahu has still not been received in the White House, and here comes Benny Gantz, his chief rival, who's going to be received, is going to have discussions with administration officials, and I see this as the beginning of a process that may see a splintering of the Israeli War Cabinet. I think the prospect of elections in Israel that would probably displace Netanyahu is increasing. In the polls now, Gantz, who will meet with Kamala Harris today, is far ahead of Netanyahu. If the race were held tomorrow, Gantz would win it. So keep your eyes on that, and then the political repercussions back in Israel. But basically, we're in a moment where the U.S. is going to play a much more significant role, both on the ground with aid and in these meetings with people like Gantz.
David, please weigh in for us on two things. The fact that the U.S. has had to resort to these airlifts for the supplies, doesn't that also point to a weakness and inability to push Netanyahu to provide more safety, to get better, more supplies in via the ground? And then secondly, speak to us about the urgency that the U.S. has, and it was a bit on display from the vice president over the weekend, to get a ceasefire in place before Ramadan, the Muslim holy month, just about a week away.
So, Jonathan, the convoy situation was going pretty well in January. There were more than 200 trucks a day that were coming in. And then things got tangled, in part because the convoys were being protected by police from Gaza who were affiliated with Hamas. And Israel began targeting them, and the police said, we want guarantees we won't be shot at. And they didn't get those guarantees. So suddenly you had no protection for the convoys. Some of the openings, the crossing at Kerem Shalom into Gaza was closed. So suddenly there was a scarcity of food, and that I think has exacerbated the problem. In terms of what's coming up, the U.S. believes that if this ceasefire can be achieved in the next week, Ramadan starts in about 7 days from now, that it will begin a process of de-escalation. So the ceasefire will last for 6 weeks initially. 40 Israeli hostages, wounded, sick, elderly, women will be released. And then the hope is that at the end of that 6 weeks, there's still a lot of male hostages being held by Hamas, that there'll be another pause of additional time, so another 6 weeks maybe, and that you'll begin to get conditions where you could really ratchet this conflict down. That's the hope. But first, they've got to get this initial agreement. That's what they're trying so hard to get today.